the live art stream. I have a couple things I want to talk to you about today before we get started. So, um, the first thing is that today is the first day that we will introduce sepia tones. Now, if you don't have a sepia tone and you're just using a number two pencil, which is totally fine, don't worry about it. You just shade. If we're only doing it on one object in the scene, it's the tree. We're going to be making it a brown tree, basically. So if you don't have sepia tones, don't worry about it. You can just shade it with your pencil. But I want to talk to you about it because now that I'm starting to introduce sepia tones, let me just go ahead and show you what those are. It's these right here, or these pencils here. So I'm just going to hold, well, these colors are probably easy to see. This is like a red chalk. This is the actual sepia tone, which is a brown. And this is what's called a dark sepia tone. Okay, so we will be using, I believe, the medium, like the normal sepia today. The thing about these these are types of chalk. Whenever you start introducing color into drawings, a lot of times it's in chalk form when you're talking about professional drawings. So because of that, chalk tends to get on other things, So I just want to show you. So here's something I have done in sepia before with the red chalk and the sepia tones. I want to show you the opposite page. Yeah. So you can see, like the outline of this vase here, you can actually see on this page because it's rubbed off. Let me see if I have any other sepia tones in here. I know I do. Here's another one that I did not too long ago. Oh, sorry, it's upside down, but so this is the drawing. And we'll probably do this one at some point in the future. It's the Sierra Nevadas. But you can see some of it did get on the other page. So this happens. So I wanted to show you this because I want to talk to you about a way that you can stop that from happening. You can either buy what's called spray fixative, which is a little expensive, in my opinion, especially since it does the exact same job of, hold on, let me go get this. Hairspray. So you can get this. I don't know where I got this. Probably, I don't use hairspray very often. So, like for my actual hair, I mostly use it for art. So you can go to a dollar store and whatever hairspray they have, just get whatever the most extra strength they have. And this is what you do. So you hold it. I always shake mine. Give it a good. You hold it probably, I would say, I'm going to put this here. I'm going to hold this upright so you see about how far. Okay, so maybe, what is that, about a foot away. And you just lightly spray. And then you let it dry. Don't touch it. Let's see if I hold it up close. I don't know if you'll be able to see. I don't think so. I think that my camera doesn't have good enough resolution for you to see. But there's like these tiny little specks that I can see. And so once those dry, those will not be, like right now they're a little bit shiny. They won't be shiny once they're dry. So then your piece is, and you can do a couple applications of that, especially if you're using charcoal. We do have some pictures, some images we're going to do in the future that do use charcoal. And charcoal is probably the most messy of everything. I mean, in fact, when I was in college, I remember, and it was the same for everybody in the class that used charcoal. I mean, we'd come out and we'd have it on our face and all over our hands and stuff, because you get it all over your hands and then it spreads to other things. And then, you wipe your eye and now you have like a black eye because because you put charcoal under there and it just gets everywhere. So it's really important to spray a fixative. Like I said, you can get a high quality fixative from an art store. I don't know what the price of that is, but I would guess you're looking at least $10 to $15 for a small can. Whereas, for this stuff, again, you can get it from the dollar store. A Dollar Tree is my favorite dollar store. So I probably got this from like Walmart or something like that. I don't know if they have Suave or not, but it doesn't really matter. There's a bunch of different just cheap brands. It doesn't have to be high quality. It just has to be that kind of spray, because if you get the spray where it doesn't have aerosol, and I don't normally condone this because it's not nice to the environment. However, in this particular case, it works better. If you get just the regular spray bottle that doesn't use aerosol, you're going to get these little droplets on your picture, and that can actually ruin your image. So for the cases of this, either get the expensive spray fixative or get cheap hairspray, but get the aerosol kind. Okay, so that is my public service announcement as far as drawings go. We're only doing one thing today, but I do have, let's see, I know for Easter, and that's a month away, but let's see, for Easter, I'll show you what we're going to do that will use quite a bit more. Here we go. So this is what I want to do for Easter. And you can see there's quite a bit more red and brown in this. So I'm going to start introducing color. Just sepia tone. I'm not going to introduce any other extreme colors. But there we go. If we're using like red or brown, you can actually use colored pencils, like a brown or red colored pencil. Those will not smear nearly as much because they are, depending on the quality of the colored pencils, they're either wax or they are type of, I think it's like dyed graphite. I'm not entirely sure how they make colored pencils. So let's just smooth over that fact because I don't know. But all I do know is that they don't smear as much. So you don't have to worry about that. Okay. Just to talk about the other pencils we're going to use. For the most part, I tend to use 2B, which is, the B stands for bold. Those are graphite pencils. We also use lead pencils. So this set here, which is the Gioconda set by Koh-i-Noor, this set has everything that you need, including, I don't know why I completely closed this because I knew I was going to open it again, including a spreader. And I usually, because I do sometimes use the red, I will have a red side and a black side because when you're spreading, you don't want to mix those up. It comes with a kneaded eraser. The spreader wants to be everywhere, apparently. Kneaded eraser just means that it can be bent and molded to the size and shape that you need it. I also like to have regular erasers. So this is a pretty good one. This is a very soft eraser. This is a rubber. This is about a medium eraser. It's just a piece of one. I break up my erasers sometimes because the big pieces, well, they tend to break on their own anyway, and at least I can control where it breaks. A pencil sharpener. If you are using a number 2 pencil, really that's all you need in a piece of paper. But if you're using a number 2 pencil, then you can kind of ignore everything other than the paper and the pencil for now. Maybe the sharpener. I will say this sharpener is actually a makeup pencil sharpener. They tend to be a little bit less expensive and much higher quality than if you were to go to like an art store. But they're made to withstand like wax pencils and things that are used in makeup. So I encourage you to get this. These can be purchased at any beauty supply store, like Sally's or Star, something like that. Paper. So I'm using a 9x12 drawing pad. And today we are going to be doing a landscape. So go ahead and get out your paper and we're going to turn it to the side. Now, if you are using a pad like this, I am pretty good about being light enough to where it doesn't go through anymore. But when I was first starting out, it would go through where you'd have marks on subsequent pages. And so if you want to avoid that, I would put a piece of cardboard or something in between, something that doesn't have a texture to it, because you want it to be smooth, so that doesn't show up in the top. But it will prevent from going through. Also, cardstock works. So if you have heavier paper like cardstock, that can work. So we're going to start out. We're going to use our 2B pencil. Now, if you notice, I've got my Discord channel, my server down here at the bottom of my page. There's also a Discord link further down the page, and I encourage you to go here, because the reference drawing is there. So I've put the drawing that we're going to be going off of today at this. If you are watching this on YouTube, or you're watching a VOD on Twitch, and you're not present for this moment, you can still join. You can still go look at the reference photo. This is open to anyone. You do not have to subscribe or anything like this. This is open. I want everyone to join and share your artwork. This is also a place where you can upload your own artwork, especially if you follow along. I would love to see your work, and we'll give you my professional critique if you're interested in that. But also any artwork that you're working on. You know, it doesn't have to be just what we are doing today. I have a couple digital artists that have uploaded their work. So please feel free to share any artwork you have. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Starting with our 2B pencil. This is the number 2 pencil is considered HB. It is directly in the middle between the hard and the bold, the H pencils and the B pencils. 2B though is usually the softest, how do I describe this? The softest hard pencil. So like, it's the most like a regular pencil where you still get some smoothness to it. So we use that a lot as our base for drawing everything. So that's what we almost always start with, is the 2B pencil. Very lightly, because we're just kind of sketching in the background, we're going to draw some jagged peaks. Now, the peaks themselves are going to start probably right about here on the page. So that's approximately 2 inches. I did say I was going to learn metric, and I didn't. And I'm sorry for that. But what did we say that was? About 5 centimeters. So approximately there. Okay. So let's go ahead and draw some jagged peaks of different heights. Okay. Very simple. We're not getting too fancy yet. All right, we're going to draw a few more peaks down in the body of the mountain. I'm just going to erase this line here because it's bugging me, that guideline. Always remember, I'll usually say it a few times, but when you erase, always blow. Don't wipe, because when you wipe, that's when you smear everything. But don't worry, I mention it a lot. All right, so let's get another peak in here. We're just drawing kind of pointy, almost triangles, except for they don't have the bottom. Let's see, another one down here. And maybe one over here. Okay. These aren't really fancy. I'm not getting too intricate or anything. Just giving us an idea of where our stuff is going to be. All right. Now, we are going to lightly shade the right side. Our light source is coming from the left. So we're going to lightly shade the right side. What I like to do is I like to draw kind of a squiggly line coming down and to the right. And then what you do is you shade on that side. Just very lightly. I'm going to hold this up because that is very difficult to see. So I just made this little squiggly line, and then I just lightly shaded right above the line. And I just kind of let it come to a point. All right. I'm going to do the same. You can leave some peaks. Some peaks aren't going to necessarily have shading. Let's see. This one, I'm going to let it come down. I'm going to shade. Let's see. This one, I'm going to let it come down too. So this one here is going to have, it's a very tiny peak. So we'll go ahead and shade. Leave that little tiny bit of peak white. We're going to come in with our spreader and smooth this out. So it doesn't have to be particularly smooth. Just as long as you get some shading over there. Let's see, this one, I will have a little bit there. Let's see. And I don't know, I'm going to make that one a little curvy. I actually don't want this peak here. I'm going to take that out. All right, I'm going to draw this one. I'm going to let this one come down a little farther. That's what we're going to do. Now I am using my reference photo. Now, because of the way the light hits everything, it's going to be darker towards the squiggly line and lighter towards the farther it gets away from that. So I just go back in right up at the squiggly line and just do a little bit, just kind of darken it a little bit. And all I'm doing, I'm not pressing any harder. I'm just adding another layer of pencil, which will create the illusion that it's darker. I mean, it technically is, but it's more just that the first line of pencil that we put down there didn't cover everything. Okay. Now, we're going to set our pencil down. We're going to grab our spreader. Don't forget, if you've been using this for the red, I think we did a little bit of red last week. Then you have a red side and a black side. Also, if you don't have one of these, you can use a piece of paper that you crumple up and just make like a little ball out of it, and you can use that because this is just newsprint. So we're just going to come in, starting right at the line, and then gradually lift our, like bring the spreader up from the paper so that it's not so much pressure, I guess. All right. So I'm just going along the line of the squiggly line that we made. And then I'm just getting lighter as I go out, just lighter pressure. At the squiggly line, you can push your pressure a little bit harder, just a little bit more. And that will make it darker. Now these kind of connect to each other. All right. We've got our last two little peaks down here. I'm going to make my peak just a little bit more obtuse. I'm going to make my angle a little more obtuse. That means making the angle wider versus acute. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'm just going to make the angle just a little wider. Okay, now we're going to take our spreader and just very lightly, we're just going to come down and just put some very light shading in different parts. And that's going to give some contour to the mountain. And I'm just being random about it. Maybe put a little bit, like little triangles of shade. This one's more an S shape. This whole peak here, I think, has a little bit of darkness on it because it's maybe make it look like it's down in between these two peaks here. Tiny bit of shading. I mean, there's hardly anything here, so. All right, so I'm going to hold this up so you can see some of this light shading that I did here, and that's how light it is. You can barely see it even when I hold it up. I mean, we're just very little. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our 2B pencil again, and we're going to start doing our evergreen trees in the background. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to very lightly draw, starting right about the middle. It'll dip down a little bit. Just making like two little hills. And this will give us a basis for our evergreen trees to come off of. So first thing we're going to do, very lightly, I mean very lightly, you want to hardly see this. We're going to actually get some of our trunks in there. So we'll do a trunk here and here, here. Now, because of perspective, I'm going to hold this up so you can see. So you can see how light these lines are. Because of perspective, the lines over here we want them to look like they're coming close to us. So they're going to be a little taller. And as they go off in the distance, they're going to get closer together and they're going to be shorter. And that gives the illusion that the trees are going away from us. Now, I don't know which week I do it, but I'm going to be talking about single point perspective coming up here. So it's not terribly important that we get it right this moment, but we will be talking about that in future classes. So remember, as we come back out, they're going to gradually get taller and wider, farther apart. Okay, that's probably a little too tall. No, these aren't Georgia pines. Okay. So what we're going to do a basic, it's a zigzag. You start at the top of the tree. It's a little like a Christmas tree, if you think about that. Like where you start at the top and it's like a little zigzag and then you gradually go into a bigger zigzag towards the bottom. So we're going to do that. So we're just zigzagging back and forth. Okay. Now on this side, we're going to have some trees in front of these, so they don't have to be perfect. We just have to give the illusion. The illusion of trees. I like to try to make my bases wide enough to where my trees are almost touching in most cases at the bottom. And I don't always stay right on the straight, like where it's even across the whole trunk. You know, sometimes my trunk ends up a little bit to the right or to the left of wherever it is that I'm making the rest of my tree. And I got really small back here. Well, it's okay. It's very far away. These are very distant mountains. So I'm just finishing off my zigzag. Okay. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to take our spreader, and we're going to come in, and we're not going to do the exact same zigzag. We're just going to kind of do like little X marks. So all I'm doing is just, I'm doing very shallow X's, crisscross, crisscross, like that. And what this does is it takes that zigzag that we did and gives it like a little bit more of a natural look. Just crisscrossing. Little tiny crisscrosses the farther away you get. In fact, like I hardly even have room to crisscross at these little tiny trees in the back, and that's okay. And they're going to end up looking a little darker. And that's okay too. Only thing about working with a spreader is, man, it can really work your hand. Even if you're used to it, it's still quite an exercise. So just be sure to every once in a while, you know, relax your hand. I'll give a little tiny break at the end of this since I usually work pretty fast to give everybody a chance to catch up. For anyone who's just joining us, we did our mountains first. And now we're working on our trees, which were just little zigzags, and now we're coming in with X's on the trees with our spreader. Oops. Okay. Trying to give you guys a little bit of a chance to catch up. I tend to work pretty fast. If you're watching this on YouTube later, Of course, you can always pause it. YouTube or VOD, you can pause it. That's kind of the nice thing now about, Bob Ross is one of my favorites to watch. And it's nice because it used to be I could watch live. But now it's great because I can pause it. And I can catch up because he moves very quickly. All right, we're almost done with our X's. And I'll give a short little break before we move on to the next section. Oh, this one somehow got dark right there. I don't know what happened. Just caught like a certain part of my spreader. Okay. So, I'm going to take just a quick little break. It's also good for me to break from my hand because it's cramping up a little bit from that. Then, the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to bring in our second row of trees that it's going to come in front of these trees. So that is our next task. Oh, excuse me. Oh. Actually, you know what? I might do a row of trees in the back. So we'll continue with our 2B pencil. So what I'm going to do is very, very lightly, I'm going to put a little bit of trees, just almost like in the sky. Like it just, they look like they're not connected to anything. I'm going to do some on the other side. These are going to be even lighter. And in fact, I'm probably not even going to use the pencil. I'm just going to use the spreader and do our zigzag. This gives the illusion that there are trees back there, but that there's clouds or something, probably like fog or something like that, that is keeping us from seeing all of them. Bring some of them like a little farther down, like there's a mist. We'll do the same on this side. Now the good thing is that my spreader has been used quite a bit. So if you're using a relatively new spreader, you might have to do the zigzags first. Just do them very lightly. My spreader has lots of stuff on here from other drawings. There we go. Maybe a little guy right here. So it just gives the illusion that there's something going on in the background. Now we're going to use our 4B pencil. Now for those of you using a number 2 pencil, you're just going to press a little bit harder. We're going to bring in our trees in the foreground. So we'll go ahead and start. We're not going to do too many of them. Let's go ahead and give ourselves kind of a base to draw the trees on. So this is probably about an inch, 2.5 centimeters from where the tree line starts here. And then on this side, we're going to do 2 little lines, also about an inch. And then we're going to do another little line back here, like that. Okay? So let's go ahead and get our trunks in there. I'm going to do a little guy here. Okay, we'll do the same over here. Now again, you're pressing a little bit harder if you're using a number 2 pencil. 4B pencil, you can use about the same pressure because 4B is bolder. I'm going to have one tree kind of leaning forward a little bit. These trees are a little bit farther back, so they won't be as tall. And we're going to do approximately the same thing. But this time, instead of doing full jagged lines where they're connected to each other, I'm going to just do little hash marks, little lines that go back and forth. But the lines do gradually get bigger as they get down to the bottom. Some of these trees can overlap each other because they are closer. These are happy trees, just like Bob Ross talks about in his paintings. I always make happy trees. If you really want to get to know what a tree looks like, go out and study it. You know, take your sketchbook outside and draw the tree. Take some time to get to know the trees in your neighborhood. This will help you get better at understanding what trees look like. When I was in college, my drawing teachers had us go out and sit in different areas. I remember even sitting in a graveyard for a while and just drawing. There were little benches there and just drawing everything that I saw because that's how you get better. So these, as you can see, are just straight lines. I'm going to go ahead and continue my straight lines over here. Again, gradually getting bigger as they get towards the bottom. Keep them relatively close together, but not right up on top of each other. Little hash marks. And part of the reason we're using a different technique for these trees versus the ones in the background was because it makes them look different. It makes them look closer, and because it's a little bit different texture. Now remember this one I did like kind of, you may not have done this, but I have it kind of leaning. But the different texture, by having our line strokes look a little bit different, just indicates to the viewer that these are different because they're closer. I'll put a little guy here. Okay. Now we're going to get our spreader and we're going to do X's, just like we did before. These X's are not as successful as the ones in the back were. in my opinion. So we may have to come back in with our pencil and do a couple of X's with our pencil. And that happens sometimes. Sometimes the technique you choose ends up not being the right one. You got to learn to just go with the flow. And you'll find a way. As an artist, you know, you're a creative person. So you're going to come up with ways to creative solutions to fix whatever issues arise, whether they be from your own decisions or slips where, you know, your pencil slipped up or something like that. It happens. In fact, I'm always glad when there's like little mistakes, little missteps, because it gives me an opportunity to learn. You know, I learned something new, that maybe this technique, maybe we should have done some X's first, or who knows. We'll see what it ends up looking like. It doesn't look bad. It just looks a little more choppy than I wanted it. I can still see the lines that I made pretty clearly. And I don't want to see them as clearly. I was thinking that this was going to blend a little bit more than it did. I overestimated my spreader and the amount of stuff it had on it. And that is okay. Now these ones in the background are doing exactly what I wanted it to do. So clearly these are just, the trees in the front are just a little too close. Maybe that's the problem. My technique would have worked if they were farther away. So now what we're going to do, we're going to take our 4B pencil. Actually, you know what? Let's do 2B. Which means for your number 2 pencil users, you're going to lighten your pressure. We're just going to do little tiny X's. Very light. You don't have to be very dark about it. Yeah, that's much better. That brings that out a little bit. So just tiny little X's. And what that does too is it breaks up those lines to where they don't look quite as pre-planned. You know, they were kind of looking very just unnatural. You know, that's not what trees look like. So it's one extra step, a little bit extra work. But it's okay, because actually I like that maybe it's not really an extra step. Maybe we're just learning that we needed both steps, because I like that there's some horizontalness going on in the background, and we wouldn't have had that without those lines. So maybe we need both. Maybe we need both the X's and the horizontal lines. So it's not really an extra step. And sometimes these are going to blend a little bit more. All right. So we don't need to do the trees in the back because those blended fine. I don't know. They just were just farther away. Maybe I put my lines closer together. Not sure, but it worked. So we just have 2 more trees to do. And then we can move on. Okay. Whew. Give my fingers a little stretch from all of the crisscrossing. Okay. So, just, I'll let you guys finish that up. We're just going to emphasize kind of our snowy ground. This is with a 2B pencil. All I'm doing is coming and just underlining where our trees are. And that just makes it look like it's like a little snowbank or somewhere where the trees were. All right. So we've got our snow, we've got our trees, we've got our mountains in the background. And in fact, I'm going to just gradually pull my mountains down a little bit into the tree line. All right, now if you have the set, we're going to use our 2B graphite stick. You can continue using the pencil. If you're using a number 2, you continue using your number 2 pencil, and that's fine. But we are going to come in and we're going to start doing our stream. All right, just a reminder to anyone who's joining that you can go to the Discord channel here and you can see today's reference photo and see what we're going to be doing. There's also a link at the bottom of the Twitch page. It's a button that you can just go straight to it. Okay, so our stream is going to come around from this bottom line here. So it's going to come around and just I'm just doing this little sketchy line. It's going to come kind of towards the middle. It's going to get wider. Even wider. And then it's going to end at the bottom. So I'm going to hold this up so you guys can see that a little bit more clearly. So you've got the where it's almost takes up the half of the, actually it does take up half of the paper here at the very bottom. This is the part that's closest to you. This is single point perspective. Again, like I said, we'll be discussing that further. I think it might be next week that I'm doing that. It's either next week or the next, but where I am going to discuss single point perspective, both with drawings and with paintings. But for this week, we're not going to talk too much about the perspective itself. I just want you to know that's what this is. Things when they get closer to you, look like they're bigger. So we go across the whole page, and then we gradually get smaller. And I'm just going back and forth to the point where then it almost dissipates to just a line. This is going to be our stream. All right, so we've got that. I'm going to go back to my 2B pencil or your number 2 pencil if that's what you're using. And we're going to start in the stream just putting little rocks. We're going to start outlining what we want our bank to look like. So we might outline the bank. And I'm going to put like a little rock here, which is just an oval shape. And of course, for some reason, my camera decided to get blurry just now. That's fun. So see, I'm going to start outlining the stream. Now, keep in mind that our snowbanks are going to have like kind of jagged edges. It's not going to be really clean. So I might put, you see how I'm doing like jagged edges here? Might go up a little bit, come down. So I'm just making up my edges. There's no one particular way to do it. Everybody's is going to look different. And as you get farther away, you're going to stop being able to see the snowbanks. All right, so let's get some more rocks in here. I'm going to do another oval shape. And maybe a smaller oval shape here. Let's see. I'm going to get away from the oval shape now. I'm going to try to do this one. I don't know. This looks like a little bit like a bicycle seat maybe. That's another oval shape. Sorry. Old habits die hard, you know. I like my oval shapes. All right. So now we're going to come in on this side. Our bank will start just a little bit above the where the page ends, like above the corner. You don't ever really want to end something directly in the corner unless that is your design, and especially if you're doing geometric and you're doing like straight lines from the middle or something like that. That might be a case where you would want to end directly in the corner. But for most things like natural scenes like a landscape, you don't want to end directly in the corner because that will be confusing to the viewer's eye. The viewer knows that it shouldn't end right there. So I always come up just a little bit. So our stream maybe can go a little bit farther across, and that's okay. And I'm just letting this be jagged. I'm just letting my pencil just kind of you know, just meander along. And every once in a while I just go up because that's like another snowbank. Now, this side is going to do something a little bit different. It's going to actually come back towards us. There we go. So you're starting to see how the stream is taking form. All right, let's get some rocks on this side. I want to do one Mama Jama rock. I want to do a big one over here. Let's see. This is just like huge rock in the stream. And we're going to be erasing out from where, that's why we did this lightly before. We're going to be erasing out. Might do another pretty decent size one back here. A little guy. Maybe another little guy. These are going to be snow-covered rocks. Okay. So we're good with that. I'm going to start erasing out some of my rocks because they're going to be snow covered. So while you guys finish up and get all of your rocks in place, finish up your shoreline. Now you can use the kneaded eraser for this. Remember, blow, don't wipe, so you don't smear everything. So I just knead it into a point and then come in and erase out of my mostly ovals that I made. You'd think it was my favorite shape. It is not. The hexagon is my favorite shape. I love bees. I love honeycombs. Wait, that's not a hexagon. That's a, Oh, hey, Teacher Margot. Yes, I know that you had some errands today, but thank you. Thank you for being on. Hopefully the kids aren't having too painful a time at the dentist. Okay. Now that we have our shapes, we know what we're going to do. We're going to use lead. Lead is darker than graphite. So we're going to use the pencil. And mine are numbered 1 through 3. So 1 is actually the darkest. So I'm going to use my 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and just start shading in. And this is going to give me a little bit darker. See how that's coming in darker. Picture perfect teeth. I love to hear that. You wouldn't know it from some of the sugar that they enjoy, but I'm really glad. That means they're brushing their teeth and doing a good dental routine. Very important. Dental health is extremely important. So we're coming in. And again, all I'm doing is shading in. I'm not doing anything fancy. Just shading. We will come in with our spreader and make this smoother. But right now I just want to get the color in there. Even if that color is black. You always hear, or at least I've heard, silly debates where, is black a color? Is white a color? Yes, they are colors. White, maybe not, because it's technically the absence of color, but black for certain is a color. It is everything, all of the colors. And I would say, really, if you look at the definition of color as what's reflected, then white's a color too. Just means nothing's reflected. Or everything's reflected. Sorry. Don't quote me. Don't quote my science today, guys. Apparently my science is a little off. Everything is reflected. Okay. Or is it refracted? See? You'd think I didn't teach this just last year. This is how quickly we forget. It's why you have to keep studying things. Don't just stop. If you're really interested in something, you can't just learn about it and then let go. Because then you do like me, where you state things that sound like facts, but maybe they're not. So, check behind me. I'm frequently right, but I am sometimes not. So, I do love science, though, so I just need to be reading about it more. That was one of the interesting things I discovered, though, when I started. We're going to use our spreader next, just so you know. Once you get everything colored in, we're going to come in with the spreader. When I started teaching 4th grade last year, when I was homeschooling my nephew, I realized that there was a lot I had forgotten from science and things that I really love, like the light spectrum is pretty cool. I mean, I have a prism around here somewhere because we use that in school. And I enjoy physics and that part of science, and I had forgotten a lot of it. So we lose information. Our brain only keeps what it needs to use. I've heard people say that, you have to really focus on one thing and become an expert on that thing. And I don't know if that's always true. I think you can learn about a lot of different things. But if you really enjoy something and you want to have conversation about it, it is important to continue reading about that. And don't just read one book about something, read more than one. Get more than one perspective on it. I mean, if anything, I've read books. I read a couple different books about DNA, and one of them ended up not only explaining very well, but was really funny. It was called, I want to say it was called The Double Helix. Really funny book. I mean, it's probably a lot of nerd jokes if I remember correctly, but I like those. Just really funny stuff. So, you never know. You never know when you're going to get a really amazing book. So just read as much as possible about the subjects that you love. I think this was a little guy in the back. I don't know. I almost just covered him up, this little rock. So be careful of that. When you get farther and farther away, your rocks get smaller, as they should, because that's what it looks like from a 3D perspective. But you might accidentally cover them up. So don't do that. Okay. I'm pretty happy with mine. Hopefully, I know everybody's working on theirs. So I'll give you just a second. But we've got everything spread in. So now we are going to use I'm going to go back to that number 1 graphite. Let's see, this is the one. And we're going to come right under each of the rocks and do dark. It's going to be dark. This is both our shadow. So there's a couple things going on here. You've got the shadow, and you also have the rock below the snow. So I'm just giving my lines, I'm making them jagged, so it's not going to be just straight across. So as you can see, I'm just kind of looping up here and there, letting my lines come up and be a little bit haphazard. They don't have to be perfectly straight. All right, now I'm going to come in below and kind of bring that down farther so that it looks like there's a little bit of reflection in the water. Now this is going to be icy water. So like that. So see how I brought that farther down? I'll hold this up for you to see better. So I did my jagged line and then I brought this down a little bit. And it's going to end up looking like reflection because we're going to actually erase out a little bit in our water / ice. I mean, I guess ice is water. All right, so let's do this for each of the rocks. We're also going to do this on our shoreline. Not in the whole thing, but in parts, and I'll show you where to do that. So again, make sure you've got your jagged lines that come up. And then just kind of give them some depth below. All right. Let's get all of our rocks done and then I'll show you the shoreline. Because that way, because if I'm a little bit faster, I'll get to it before you so you can use mine as a reference. Now, anyone, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. I do not have off-topic policies. I mean, I'd like it to be about art, but of course it does not have to be. I'm fine with people talking about whatever, but also whatever questions you have, I will try to answer. Luckily, I'm not so busy. I don't know if it's lucky or not, but I'm not so busy that I can't answer some questions. So please ask anything. Doesn't even have to be about the art. I like questions. Okay. This little guy back here is just going to have barely any line. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move to the bank so that you guys can see where this is going to go. So, again, I'm making my bank edge like kind of a jagged edge. Let's see. All right, so I'm going to make that a little bit thicker. just like we did with the rocks. This drawing's moving right along. I was afraid that at the beginning, because I added that little bit about spray fixative and showing you how to fix your pieces. Question: how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Wow. I would say 7 trees. So you can double check my answer on that, but I'm pretty sure I'm right on that one. All right. So we're going to skip this line here that goes up, and we're going to start at the next bank. So that's basically how it's going to go. We're going to skip some lines, which will give the appearance that there's a bank behind it that we can't see. I'm glad you liked that. Thank you for asking a question, despite its non-art subject. So I'm just being jagged again, jagged lines. You know, I just realized something, and who knows, maybe one of you can riddle me this. Why do all of the really cool, interesting, like nice places to live seem to be in the north where it's cold? Is this a chicken and egg situation where like the heat just makes you grouchy and not easy to get along with or something? I don't know. All the happy places seem to be where it's chilly. Quite chilly. Like, 4 hours of daylight during the winter, chilly. And I'm just curious about that because I like the heat quite a lot. But I also like living around people that I like, So aside from a few of my friends, you know who you are. It's just not as interesting or cool. It's not conducive to a mindful environment. Okay, so once I get to the back here, I'll just cut myself off. Once I get to the back here, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to continue on up around. So you can see that there's a couple places where I did not do any darkening. All right, let's do the other side. So we're not going to do any darkening along this entire line. I might actually just kind of outline it to give it a clean look. But I'm not going to start the dark bits until right here. And it's kind of the same. The dark bits are only going to be on the part that's coming towards you. Even in the United States, I've heard really good things about like Alaska, for example. Also, there's the whole Midwest that has a pretty good reputation for being just nice people, don't you know? Golly gee gosh. They're just so nice up in Minnesota. So it's like, what is it about the cold? I just want to know. If anybody has an answer for that, please let me know. Because if I can figure that out, I might be willing to live in the cold to deal with it, if I know why. Because I don't like being cold. But maybe there's something to it. Maybe the cold just makes you more mindful. Maybe you stay indoors more and you cuddle up and get warm more. I don't know. Something keeps cold people happy. Happier than the rest of the world. I want to know. All right, so I'm skipping this whole section here. And I'm coming in. Doing my jagged lines. Skipping a couple more sections. And then gradually I'm starting to get smaller and smaller, and I'm not even worrying about pressing down anymore because my line is going to be so thin. You're not even going to see it. But we are going to continue all the way around to the edge there. Okay. So now you can see that by adding this darkness here, it actually makes, especially with the jagged lines, it actually makes it look like snow on top. So that's what we want. That to me is successful. Now I'm going to come in here and in the middle, well, actually, before we do that, I'm going to let you guys catch up a little bit. I'm going to take my kneaded eraser and I'm going to come in, I'm pinching it to a point, and where my rocks are, I'm going to erase out right below. It's not going to be able to erase all of it because we used 4B and 4B, we did use 4B, but we also used the graphite pencil, which is hard to completely erase. So we're not going to erase all of it. So you don't even have to worry about whether you press hard or not with your eraser. It's not going to happen. But we're just following our rock. And see, this gives it like a reflective look. So I'll go a little bit here. Now the farther you get away, you're not going to see it as much. This is more the reflection of the snow. And I keep bringing mine to a point. I keep kneading it to a point because I want to be able to get a very small area. All right, and we're going to do this for all of our little rocks. Okay. Now, after you do that, I'm going to come back in. I'm going to be using my the Silky Black pencil, which is the lead, 1. And I'm just going to be coming in and just darkening it up even more in the middle here. And I'm making sure to kind of keep my new little reflective areas out of this. It's especially dark in the middle because that's where it's deeper. And this doesn't have to be precise. We're mostly just trying to get the idea. Okay. There. I'm just letting you catch up just a little bit. We're doing good on time because the only thing we have left to do really is the tree. So all right. So let's go ahead. We're going to go ahead and start the tree. I'm going to start with the darkest brown of the sepia sticks. Now, if you are using colored pencils, if you have two different shades of brown, one darker, one lighter, use your darker shade of brown. If you don't, go ahead and use your regular number 2 pencil is fine for this. But what we're going to do is we are going to draw the trunk of the tree first using our dark brown. So our tree is a little bit slanted. Let's see, we're going to start probably, we'll do about 2 inches, about 5 centimeters up. So we'll start maybe, that actually might, I'm trying to see. Yeah, this is fine. So I'm starting probably 2 by 2. It's about 2 by 2. Or 5 by 5 if you're doing centimeters. Okay, so our tree is going to angle just slightly. It's going to go, so it's going to be a little bit like that. So it's not like a huge angle, but it's not straight up and down either. So I'm just going to let my, it's going to go all the way off the page. That might be even a little more slanted than I wanted, but it's okay. I'm going to let it go. It's okay. Because what we're using is more chalk-like, you can't really erase it. So now, if you're using a colored pencil, you still can't erase it. Colored pencils aren't easy to erase, but if you're doing it lightly, you might actually be able to. All right, so we're going to do our second line. So our tree is probably, it's a little less than an inch. It's probably only about 2 centimeters wide. Maybe a little tiny bit bigger than that, but it's not very wide. There we go. Now, we're going to go ahead and put some straight lines, and they're going to alternate. And it's okay that your trees are in there. Don't worry, those will definitely be covered. So I'm just putting some hash marks there, like that. Now, right about, we want it to come over the top of the mountains. So right about where the peak, the highest peak is, we're going to start like a little curve there. That's going to be the curve of our tree. And we're going to come from up above of that and put another curve like that. Now, our tree, our branch that's curving out is going to actually angle up a little bit. It's not much, but it's going to angle up because it's going to come over the top of the mountains. Framing them is what it's doing. So this is like a compositional technique. I'm just very lightly sketching where I want this to be. It's going to come back down a little bit. Come out. And we're just going to let it just sort of end there. And someone was mentioning last night they were playing my favorite game, The Witness. They were playing that, and they were talking about the trees area. And if you're familiar with that game, you get to know the angles of trees very, very well and how they branch off from each other. So that's what this reminds me of a little bit. So you'll see that as we're going. If you have never played that game before, I highly recommend that you check it out. I think you can get it for iPad, but I know for sure you can get it on PC and most consoles. I've got it on PC and Xbox. It is awesome. That's all I can say. I don't even know any words for it. There are no words for how amazing this game is. I have very, very high criteria for anything, and so for something to be my favorite, it's got to be pretty darn good. All right, so let's go ahead and finish the top part of this. Now it's going to narrow. It's going to get where it's a lot thinner. The branch is thinner. And as it goes, I'm not worried about the line being straight or anything. I'm just trying to get a little bit closer. Like gradually getting closer to the point where when it starts to curve right here, it's going to be pretty much one branch after that. Like that. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. At the very end here, so now we have our main part of our branch going on. At the very end, we're going to have a little Y. Just like that. Then we're going to come in and we're going to do a bigger Y. So you've got your shape like that. From this, we're going to have a little branch. This is the part that reminds me of the game. So if you're wondering, this is it. Okay, now we're going to have right where our branch, where we started getting thinner, to the point where it's just a single line, we're going to bring out another super crookedy branch. That's going to have a little Y at the end. There's going to be another branch that'll come up. That'll have a little Y at the end. There's going to be another little branch. For the first time, I'm not going to do a Y. I'm going to leave it. All right, now we're going to come farther in here. Maybe above, like, maybe right in between our peaks here. We'll do that. There's no rhyme or reason to why I chose that spot, just about where I want it to go. So this is going to come kind of low. I'll do a Y going up. I'm going to have another branch, something like that. And then from there, I'm going to make a Y, but this branch is going to come around and come up. Something just happened. So Steam just started talking to me, and it turns out that my nephew must be playing using my login, because he's talking to someone, and so he in chat. So Steam chat is just popping up on my computer. That's a little bit disconcerting. All right. And it looks like I'm talking to somebody, but of course I'm not, because I'm talking to you guys. All right. So there we go. That's it. I'm not even entirely sure I like this branch up at the top, but it's okay. It is what it is. We're letting it go. Let it go. Just like Elsa said. Okay. Now, we are going to put our dark brown away. And we are going to pick up our medium, our regular sepia tone. So again, if you're using colored pencils, try to use a lighter brown if you have it. Now I'm going to come in and start really filling in but still just up and down strokes. I'm not like shading or anything like that. I'm just doing straight lines like that. So I'm not going back and forth and coloring, so to speak. Oh man, the ranges started here is like really coming down now. So if you're in Florida, wherever you are, it's raining. Teacher Margot, I hope that you are not driving in this. She lives in my area here. Okay, so chalk pencils tend to leave a little bit of a residue, so I always kind of blow just to make sure that there's no residue sitting, because what'll happen is it'll all get on your hands. I mean, it's probably going to get on your hands anyway, but at least that way you control some of it. All right, so with this, you actually do the shape of that little like L. Okay. I'm going to have to tell my nephew that he can't be using my steam while I'm doing a stream. Okay, this branch here is a little bit larger, so I want to add a little bit of width to that. Not much, but a little bit. And I'm also going to add just a tiny bit to this one. Okay. Last, we're going to use our lightest, which is closer to a red. And we're going to come in, and now we're going to actually shade. So now we're going to kind of go back and forth and shade in. And you'll see that you can't even see the trees that were behind this anymore. Not really. You can see faint outlines, but see, I see that residue. I'm going to hold this up so you guys can see. It's very light, but you can see over here there's like that residue gone. So you want to get rid of that. All right, now, once we get out here, I do want to use a little bit of the red on the branches. So I'm just going to very lightly, that you don't have to do the whole branch, but just come out, try to stay on your line. I'm apparently not doing that great of a job of that. Well, at all. Okay. There we go. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our 2B pencil after you get all of this colored in. This is why it would have been okay for you to use your number 2 or your 2B pencil at the beginning, because we're going to come in and just go around the outline of our tree. Just to clean it up. Now you can do some lines on the inside if you want. And then there you go. We're not going to do the branch. We don't, maybe the top. I might do the top of the branch. There. I smeared a little bit. That happens. This is what happens with chalk. Chalk smears. Ooh, okay. Now we're going to take our 2B pencil and kind of come in and do a line under the tree. Now, the line gradually gets lighter. On both sides. So it's pretty dark right where the tree is. Last thing, and then we should be done with this. I'm going to double check and make sure that there's not something I'm missing. I feel like there is, but last thing we're going to do is we're going to make the shadow of our tree. You know what? I want some darkness. I want some darkness in here. We're going to darken the tree a little bit more. But let's go ahead and get our shadow in first. I don't like how light that tree is. So I'm going to take my spreader. Sorry. Had a little brain fart there. I couldn't remember what it was called. And it's just going to come off the side of the page. Like that. And we're just going to spread that in. Okay. Now, sometimes what I like to do is I like to come across with my finger and just spread an area like that. I didn't mean to get up here. But it gives it a little bit more of a natural look. I'm also thinking that there needs to be a little bit of shadow over here. Not a lot, but well, let's just shade over here a little bit to show that, that our trees are casting some shadow. But I think that's all we really need from that. All right. I do want to darken up the tree. So let's see. How do I want to do that? We can darken it with brown, or, and this is my preference, I say we darken it with actual color. So we're going to use the 4B pencil with actual black. I'm going to actually, I want this to be a little darker too. All right. I'm going to come in and I'm going to shade on the inside. Just making it darker. Especially on the back, which is the left side. This is really the last thing. We can draw in some snowflakes. I'm going to show you how to do that if you want to put snowflakes in. I can show you with or without snowflakes. I'm going to put a little bit at the bottom of the branch here. I've got, I'm going to darken it just a little bit. And that's going to just give the illusion that it's rounded. Okay. And I am smearing stuff all over here. My snow, so I might have to take my eraser to my snowbanks. Let's go ahead and blend this. Now, I want to blend this with the black, not the red, because even though there's red in here, we also have black in here. So let's smooth this out. Use our spreader. I'm just blowing off some of the little chalk bits. Remember, the spreader also blends everything so that it doesn't look like you have like solid lines going through your piece. Okay, I'm not going to worry about spreading the ends here. I'm going to maybe go until it starts to get thinner. And then I'm going to stop. All right, so too snowflake or not too snowflake? Well, I've done both. So let me show you. See if I can find it. Okay, so, oh, apparently I did snowflakes on both of these. Well, I didn't know that. Anyway, okay, so this is with the snowflakes. You can see the little snowflakes there. There's another example. The little tiny snowflakes. I personally don't like the snowflakes. That's why I wanted to show them to you, because I don't think I want to put snowflakes in this one. I know I've done this before without snowflakes. I just don't know where it is. But so I'm going to show you with the snowflakes so you can see. All right. Man, look at the difference here of this reflected area. I like underneath the rocks and stuff are much more detailed on this one than this. But this has a much darker stream. I think I like this one better. Interesting. Well then. Okay. So here's how you do the snowflakes if you want to do them. You take your 2B or your number 2 pencil. You make a little X. And then at the end of each X, you just put little tiny, like little crosses at the end of them. So I'm going to draw one for you. Nice and big. Let's see. I've got a notebook here that I... So you've got an X or a cross or whatever you want to call that. Okay. All right. Now you're going to put little tiny crosses at the end of each of those. That's it. That is your snowflake. You're just doing them really, really tiny. I don't personally like the way it looks. There's something weird about it, but that's your basic snowflake. So if you're doing it tiny, it would look like this. And you can do it as an actual X. It looks a little better if you make it an X rather than a cross like that. So there you go. That's if you want to do the snowflakes and you just kind of do them randomly. I don't like them. I'm not going to be doing them in mine. But I just wanted to give you that option in case you wanted to do that. Again, here's what it looks like with them. So if you don't want them, you can stop now. If you do want them, you can see where I placed them before in previous classes. Okay, let's give you that idea. Now grab your 2B pencil or your number 2 pencil, and we are going to sign, because I'm going to call this Dunzo. I'm going to sign in the snowbank. Oh, I did forget to erase out of my snowbank. Let me just do that. Let's get some clean white snow here. This is a forest that's been untouched by humans, so, or at least right now. So we have nice clean snow. All right. So I'm going to just sign over here on the right. And there we have it. Now, if you have followed today's drawing, then you are absolutely welcome to upload this to the Discord channel. Just take a picture of it with your phone and upload it. I see something right now that I don't like, and that is that this is getting a little bit too narrow here. So I'm just going to really lightly come in and just widen it a little bit. Just a little more narrow than I think it should be. There we go. Better. So, in my critique, what I always like everyone to do when you're critiquing your own work is say we always do positive critiques, but say one thing that you think is working well, one thing that is actually effective in your drawing. And it depends on what you're going for. Because we're doing a landscape, we want it to look relatively realistic. We want it to look like a landscape, look like a snowy scene. And then we want, well, that's pretty much it. Realistic and that like it looks like a snowy landscape. So what do I think is working the most? And then, of course, one thing that I think I could change or add in the future if I did this again, which I highly encourage everyone to redo drawings over and over again. I mean, as you can see, this is at the very least my 3rd time doing this drawing. But every time you do it a little bit differently and probably a little bit better, because you already have the experience. So looking at this, I would say what's most effective is my stream. I really like my stream. I really like the darkness here. I didn't get that quite as much in my previous drawings. So I think that was effective. I could probably come in here and make this a little bit darker, but I'm probably just going to leave it the way it is. Okay, what needs work? My trees. My front trees are okay. It's these back trees. These back trees are killing me, man. There's something about them. One of the things you can do, you can come in with an eraser and you just dot at the situation. This might be better with a kneaded eraser. But you just dot. And what that does is it kind of lightens everything, so it makes it look more misty, more in the background. Hopefully that's not coming across too loud. So I'm going to go ahead and do this so we can see what it looks like. These were the ones. Well, I think it's an improvement. Let's see. I might come in and just do like some little X's. But I would say that's done. I like it. I think it was an improvement. I'm glad that I did that. I'm going to maybe even fill in a little bit in the middle, and that just makes it look more. Yeah, that's better. So see, we were able to fix that here. That was the main thing. Honestly, I like it. I think it looks great. So there you go. If you want to share your drawing, please do in the Discord channel, and I will give you my feedback. But if you don't have anything else, that's it for today. This Friday, I will be doing an acrylic painting called Winter Train. This is pretty much my last winter subject matter. I've been trying to kind of be thematic about it and do winter, but this is the last one. But I'm very excited about this one because I love trains so much. Y'all, you don't even know. Love trains. So I've been wanting to do this particular painting for a while. So join me 6 p.m. this coming Friday. That's Eastern time. And I will we'll be doing the train. Thank you so much for joining me today, and have a great week.